An attempt by British MPs to prevent a no-deal Brexit is gaining momentum after the opposition Labour Party said it was highly likely to throw its weight behind the move. With the UK due to leave the European Union at the end of March, it still has no approved deal on how the divorce will take place. Prime Minister Theresa May is battling to break the deadlock after last week's crushing defeat of a Brexit deal raised the prospect of crashing out of the EU. In a step that could overturn centuries of constitutional convention, some MPs are trying to grab control of Brexit from the government to prevent what they say would be an economically disastrous no-deal departure. Taking questions in Parliament, May sparred with Opposition Leader Jeremy Corbyn, rejecting the idea of delaying the UK's withdrawal while refusing to rule out a no-deal scenario.
What we have seen is amendments seeking to engineer a situation where Article 50 is extended. Now, that does not solve the issue. There will always be a point of decision, and the decision remains the same. No deal, a deal, or no Brexit.
The only consistency in her strategy seems to be running down the clock on this by threatening no deal as an alternative to her dead deal.
Well, let's get more on the Brexit debacle now with Geraint Johns, who joins us now from London. He's a professor of economics at Lancaster University. Good to have you back on the program, Geraint. Let's start with this attempt to seize control of the Brexit process from Theresa May. What do you make of it? Do you think that needs to happen so Brexit can actually be pushed through?
There is certainly scope for Parliament to seize control of the process from Mrs May. Mrs May's deal, of course, was voted on by Parliament last week and was heavily defeated. And that is for a number of reasons. Those who are hard Brexiteers don't like the idea of a backstop on Northern Ireland. And then there are others who are soft Brexiters who are indeed Remainers who don't like certain aspects of particularly the political declaration that Mrs May has arrived at. That is too vague. It doesn't guarantee any kind of frictionless trade, although that is an aspiration of the government. So there's scope for Parliament to take a greater role in the negotiation. That might lead to a consensus around a softer type of Brexit, and so there's talk about the possibilities of having customs union membership, or possibly even customs union membership, and to continue to have single market membership. And both of those things would help soften the nature of Brexit and would reduce the economic damage that results from Brexit. But in particular on this issue of whether Mrs May can rule out no deal, there are problems there, because if you rule something like that out, because no deal is the default position, we would go to no deal if no other arrangement is reached by the 29th of March. If you rule something like that out, you've got to rule something in. So what would happen on the 29th of March if it's not no deal? And Parliament still needs to agree on that. They either need to agree on a deal of some kind, or they need to agree that they want to defer. And so Article 50 would be extended, but that is something that is not in Mrs May's gift. That would have to be agreed by the European Union. They would only be likely to do that if there was a reasonable prospect of Article 50 being rescinded altogether.
Interesting. So we've seen in Parliament Jeremy Corbyn insist that Theresa May rule out a no-deal scenario, but you're saying she really can't do that on her own.
It's not in her gift. She can ask for an extension of Article 50, but she is asking, and other people have to agree on that.
Okay, well, as the uncertainty around Brexit deepens, we're seeing more and more businesses essentially relocate their headquarters overseas. Sony Europe says it's moving out of the UK into the Netherlands. And of course, we've got the very British company Dyson announcing that it's moving its headquarters to Singapore. I'm wondering, as this uncertainty drags out, what sort of damage is it doing for Britain's reputation as a corporate hub?
Considerable damage, and considerable damage not only to the reputation but also to the economy. So we've got a whole string of firms. You mentioned Dyson there and Sony. We've got other Japanese firms such as Panasonic in the financial sector. We've got Nomura. We've got Daiwa Securities talking about moving to Paris and Frankfurt respectively. We've had the announcement on Ford in Bridgend in South Wales, moving jobs to Slovakia. Not all of these things are necessarily uniquely Brexit related, but Brexit is something that many of these companies have cited as one of the explanations for what they're doing, moving these jobs out of the UK. Now, on the ground, it's not had much of an impact so far. We had the labour market statistics come out yesterday that show that employment is still increasing quite rapidly in the UK. But a lot of these are major manufacturing jobs, and there is a threat then to major employers, particularly coming from the possibility of a no deal, where the European Union would be required to impose tariffs on some of these manufacturing products that would be exported from the UK to the EU. The disruption to supply chains in an industry like motor vehicles could be quite horrific.
Interesting. You and I have spoken about the prospect of a no-deal Brexit many times in our conversations, but it seems now more and more MPs are cottoning on to the idea of what sort of damage a no-deal Brexit could actually do to the British economy. Remind us again, what damage will it do in the event of crashing out of the European Union?
We have to be clear, no deal is not the status quo. No deal doesn't mean we don't move from where we are now. No deal means that no agreements are reached between the European Union and the UK. And that means that a whole battery of legislation just disappears, and it means that things that we take for granted now in terms of planes being able to fly, basic things like this, cease to have any provision for them on the 29th of March this year. So that is falling off a cliff edge. It also means that the European Union, under World Trade Organization rules, would be required to impose tariffs on the UK, just as it does on any other third country. So vehicle manufacture, for example, would be subjected to a 10% tariff. That would price out British cars that otherwise would be sold on mainland Europe. It would also cause disruption, severe disruption to supply chains, because tariffs would be imposed on things that are traded as part of the regular supply chains in manufacturing at the moment. In addition to tariffs, a whole load of non-tariff barriers, so checks for regulations, would come in. That would impose delays at the borders. That would cause severe disruption to supply chains. And this is exactly why so many companies are now looking to position more of their activity outside the UK so that they don't need to do this cross-border traffic.
Meanwhile, Theresa May has around a week to get some sort of a deal before Parliament. We'll be watching that very closely. Geraint Johns in London, thank you as always for your analysis. Well, as the UK's exit from the EU approaches, there are reports that British supermarkets are preparing to employ extra security in case of panic buying. Pharmacies have said they may run out of medicines, and there are warnings a no-deal Brexit will be disastrous for the National Health Service. No surprise then that one company has come up with a Brexit survival box. Sarah Morris explains.
They may look like tins of paint, but they could be dinner, a la Brexit. Every Brexit box contains all you need to whip up family favourites like chili con carne, chicken tikka, and even fajitas. And there's enough food inside to last 30 days.
The Brexit box consists of 60 main meals and also meat products, so your diced chicken and minced beef in tins.
Also included is firelighter fluid and an emergency water filter. Each box costs about $380, but the company founder believes it's money well spent.
We have had quite a few predictions of potential issues and lorries being stuck at the borders, and there being quite chaos down there, and mostly because nobody really knows what to do. Nobody knows what to plan for, not even the Border Force right now. So we can't plan for every scenario, but what we can do ourselves is plan for ourselves. And having a little bit of forward thinking, a little bit forward planning, going, you know what, there might be a problem for a couple of weeks whilst things get sorted out. Let's make sure I've got enough food in place just in case.
Despite the UK government promising its contingency planning means there's no need to stockpile food, medicine or fuel, hundreds of the boxes have already been sold. After spending 2 years watching Prime Minister Theresa May fail to negotiate a deal with the EU, Lydia Mile decided to buy a Brexit box. She's also been stocking up on household items like washing up liquid.
Started me thinking that perhaps things weren't going to be as readily available as they are now. Now, if that's the case, it means that prices are going to go up and the availability is going to be gone. And all of that means that it's going to be very difficult post-Brexit.
And if it all turns out to be unnecessary, the good news is the canned food will last up to 25 years. So plenty of time to organise a camping trip and put the tins to good use. Sarah Morris, TRT World, London.